Hi everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm sharing a festive holiday card today, and it's super simple to create. I'm using some honeybee stamps, dies, and a new stamp set for the sentiment, and I hope you're gonna get some inspiration from this simple die set. So here's a look at this simple die set. There is one candy cane, but there are 3 layers to it. So just imagine the color options and different cardstocks that can be used to layer this one set. For the base, I am using a silver glitter metallic cardstock, and then I am also using some red glitter cardstock for one of the layers and a white glitter cardstock for a third layer. For a second candy cane, I'm just going to flip those 2 layers around to get a different look, but as you can see, depending on how you layer your cardstock, you're going to get different looks for your candy canes. There are some simple foliage dies. Here there is a little holly branch as well as some pine branches. And so I've die cut those out of 2 different colors of green cardstock. And then the bow, I couldn't decide on the color between red and a gold ribbon. So I die cut both and I end up layering them for some extra dimension. Same with the berries. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go with a glitter cardstock or red cardstock, and I end up using both as well. So now I'm going to adhere all the layers for the candy canes together. It is a little bit trickier with glitter cardstock. Obviously, it needs a little bit more drying time, a little bit of pressure. So I'm going to add adhesive to each of those layers, adhere them together, and use a heavy acrylic block to hold it all down while it's drying to ensure that the layers stayed adhered together. And I just have to say that I love that there are 3 layers to this candy cane because I really like the little sliver of that silver cardstock that's coming through. It adds such great detail to these candy canes. So while those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and attach my ribbon or bows together here. I just offset it just a little bit, kind of like a drop shadow, but it looks like there's layers to this ribbon. And then we can go ahead and ink blend our foliage to give them some depth and dimension. I die cut these holly stems from green apple cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm ink blending them with some field ink, also from Simon Says Stamp. I'm concentrating the color at the bottom of the leaves and the stems. So I'll do that to both stems, and then I'll move on to my pine sprigs. And for the pine sprigs, I appropriately use pine ink for that. These pine stems are die cut from green leaf cardstock, so they're a little bit darker in tone, and so I'm using a darker ink on them. So I'm applying the ink along the spine of the pine stems on all of the different sections of the pine on this die. This die cut is a little bit more delicate with all of the little thin sprigs that are popping out of the center spine. So I'm just being really careful and holding it down while I ink blend just the center of the spine on all of these pine stems. I'll finish with the second pine as well. Then we're going to use some glossy accents and white embossing powder to add some snow to our stems. I'm using plain white embossing powder this time. You can use puff powder if you have it. It'll just add a little bit more dimension, but regular embossing powder works just as great. I have my glossy accents here in a fine tip bottle that I've had in forever. So I like to use that because it's very detailed and I get to add it to these delicate pine needles here. And you'll notice that the white embossing powder does cover a lot more of the pine needles than I had originally intended, and that's not because of the glossy accents. It's because of the ink not given fully enough time to dry, and so we have some embossing powder clinging to the ink that's there. And that's totally okay with me because I feel like it gives it a little bit more of an organic look of a snow dusting, so I'm okay with that. For the holly sprigs, I am just adding them to the tops of the leaves, and so again you'll see some embossing powders kind of cling to the other areas where the ink is, but as I said, it gives it a little bit more of an organic dusting of snow look, so I'm okay with that. I'm also going to add some of this glossy accents and embossing powder to the tops of the candy canes, and I'm adding some drippage to make it look intentional as well, like the snow is falling off the candy cane in certain areas. So that just gives it a little bit more texture and dimension on our candy canes as well. This technique is called the frothing technique, and if you don't want to use this technique, you can use regular adhesive or use a clear lacquer just like this and use glitter instead. That'll give it a fun sugary look if you use some clear glitter, or you can use some iridescent chunky glitter as well. It's just so much fun to add texture to these elements. I also added some snow to these little berries to finish. And I should mention that this doesn't require any drying time. Heat setting it will activate the embossing powder as well as dry that glossy accents that I used. Now that I'm done, I'm not setting it aside to dry. I'm just working on my background. Like I said, it doesn't need any drying time. I'm going to add a little bit of surf ink to the center of my panel where the candy cane is going to sit. And to give my card a decorative border, I'm using the Scallop A2 die. This is the second largest die from that set. And it's going to mat my diagonal red and white diagonal pattern paper that I'll use for the matting on my card. I adhered my first candy cane with some liquid adhesive. For my second candy cane, I'm using some 3D foam squares to account for the 3 layers of cardstock of that first candy cane. And I added some liquid adhesive towards the bottom of that second candy cane so that it can sit on top of the first candy cane. And before it dries, I'm tucking in my pine sprigs here, and I'll kind of clip off the excess overlap so that there's not a lot of bulk there. And then I can attach my holly sprigs over the top of that second candy cane, and we're just going to make this spray of foliage as full as we can. As you can see, I'm also using some larger 3D foam squares at the center of the largest leaf there, and that will account for the height difference between the different sprigs and candy canes as well. Last but not least, I'm going to add my berries and my little bow here at the center of the foliage spray, holding together the bundle of candy canes. And then for the background, I am using some white and red stripes. This particular patterned paper pad is from Doodlebug, but go through your stash. I'm sure there are plenty of patterned paper pads that you have that might have this Christmas pattern in it. For the sentiment, I'm using the Honeybee Stamps Heartbeat Light stamp set. I'm embossing this sentiment over black cardstock with white embossing powder. And what I love about Honeybee Stamp sentiment sets are that they always come with coordinating dies. I just love the convenience of it and that I don't have to fussy cut. Before adding the sentiment, let's work on attaching all the other elements to a card base. I have my patterned paper here, and then I'll attach my card panel that we prepared. And to match the height again of my bouquet, I'm going to go ahead and use a sliver of dark foam adhesive on the sentiment strip to the left, and then I'll use the liquid adhesive to attach the right side of the sentiment to the ribbon and bow and foliage that's there, whatever catches it. And that finishes our simple holiday card for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're interested in any of the products that I use, be sure to check out the links below where everything will be linked for your convenience. Thank you so much for stopping by and have a wonderful day. Bye everyone.